out. Everybody.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Lights Out. I'm your host, Josh.
And I'm your host, Austin.
And I'm the producer, Daniel.
Today we got a little paranormal episode for you. It's never not spooky season here. Even though October's come to a close, it continues.
Yeah, why not?
Why not? And, you know, there's never a shortage of paranormal stories. The farther back you go in history, the more paranormal you find. And so today we thought we'd do a follow-up to one of our more popular episodes, which actually surprised me a little bit, Military Paranormal Encounters. And this is a part 2 because there's actually so much paranormal stories and history across all the decades, it seems like.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it is because it's so documented. You know, you have to document a lot in the military. So I think that's why we get all these stories so many years after the fact.
And it's pretty profound shit.
Yeah.
It's not just like hearing knocks or lights flickering or radio static. I mean, we're talking about full-on apparitions.
Seen by multiple people, too.
Yeah. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And I mean, it makes sense, right? When talking about paranormal activity, it usually centers around death, of course, and tragedy. And there's nothing more tragic than war. And there's lots of death, of course. And so it would make sense that throughout all the wars in history that there would be countless stories of paranormal activity throughout. And so today we're going to be taking a look at a couple different stories here, starting with a haunted submarine, which is pretty interesting. Submarines are awesome.
So sick.
They're cool.
Yeah.
I'd love to go on one.
Yeah. They're also naturally scary. Like going that deep.
Being trapped in a metal tube.
Yeah.
The bottom of the ocean.
Where we should not be.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly where our story begins today, with the haunting of UB-65. And this is considered one of the most haunted vessels of the modern world. UB-65 was a U-boat in the Imperial German Navy during World War I. And it was built in 1916 and launched in 1917. And if we remember, this was an era where submarines had become crucial in naval warfare. Because before that, it was like ships, you know, on top of the surface of the sea fighting amongst each other. But now you have this underwater death machine. Stealth stalking.
Yeah, shooting
ships.
Massive torpedoes.
I couldn't imagine being in the Navy during this time period and knowing that you could potentially be blasted at any point by a torpedo from these things.
And the only way to detect it, we're just using sonar out here. Little blip on the radar. We're like, oh, that thing might kill us in the distance.
So submarines were absolutely critical in the world wars. And Germany used them on a massive scale to fight the British Royal Navy and really just control the seas. The UB-65 was armed with 10 torpedoes and meant to operate close to the coastline before returning to port to reload and resupply. Over several months, this 182-foot-long UB-65 was manned by a crew of over 30 men, was involved in 6 war patrols, and destroyed 6 merchant ships and 1 British warship, and damaging 6 other vessels, just going around causing absolute destruction. And although successful during its run, the ship had concerning problems from the very start. And rumors of a haunted ship began even before it ever touched the water. While the keel was being built in the Vulcan shipyard at Hamburg, a heavy girder, which is a large support beam, fell and killed a worker while also injuring another. So before this thing even hit the water, it's already killing people.
Before it's even constructed.
Yeah. The injured man remained pinned down for 2 hours, screaming in agony. Then, during early engine trials, the faulty exhaust system leaked carbon monoxide into the engine room, where 3 men passed out, asphyxiated, and then died. And this was just the beginning. The misfortunes continued after the submarine was finally submerged, and while performing initial surface-level sea trials in the Baltic Sea, a sailor who was inspecting the hatches was swept overboard during a severe storm, and the sailor was never seen again. On the submarine's first dive, the diesel shut down and the exhaust gas leaked into the boat, almost killing everyone inside. During the same dive, a fracture occurred in the ballast tank, causing the submarine to begin sinking. After 12 hours, the crew had been panicking about oxygen renewal inside, was miraculously able to repair the ship and get back to the surface in the nick of time. And regardless of these early problems, the boat still launched, and as an official military vessel, it had even more problems. It was quickly outfitted for service, and while the submarine was being loaded with ammunition, the sloppy work caused a warhead to explode.
Good God.
I think they'd be more careful. Upon review, it seemed that one sailor had accidentally lost control of a torpedo while loading it into the submarine. The warhead was initially suspended by a crane, but dropped against the submarine's guardrails and slammed down the loading hatch before completely detonating. Several safety mechanisms designed to prevent this from happening all failed. The second in command, Lieutenant Richter, and 4 other sailors died from the explosion. A few days later, workmen began repairs on the damage when one of the men was seen racing to the wardroom to find the captain. He was shaking in fear, screaming that he had just seen the late second in command on board the craft. Captain Martin Schell tried to calm the workman down as he gasped for air. So now he's seeing ghosts. Although he didn't believe the man, the captain agreed to look on the deck to see if Lieutenant Richter was actually there. Once he made his way to the deck, he saw a crewmate named Peterson hiding behind the submarine's conning tower. The man was green in the gills and corroborated the other workman's story. He told the captain he had seen the image of the dead officer slowly walking the deck with his arms folded. He vanished into thin air soon after, but word spread about this eerie sighting, and of course, many sailors became uneasy.
Sailor Peterson deserted the crew soon after, and this is a crime that could land him in prison or even worse, being subject to execution. The drastic response had others worried, and the crew then began to claim that they felt drastic temperature shifts on board and had the feeling of constantly being observed. Many more sailors considered desertion. The crew spirit had basically just seemed to die. There were no more jokes, no more banter, and Captain Martin Schell was worried that morale was incredibly low, which can be potentially lethal for a submarine crew that spends weeks at sea. He was hoping that successful submarine raids against their enemies might pull the crew back together. By October 10th, 1917, the UB-65 and its crew were ready to set sail on their first war cruise. Along its voyage, the crew kept their eyes peeled for British submarines in the North Sea. There were no encounters, which kind of soured the eager crew even more, but on their second run, they sank 2 steamers with torpedoes. The younger crew was excited about their victories, but those who had seen the early days of misfortune for the UB-65 were pretty reserved. They still had a long voyage ahead of them. Near mid-January, the submarine was on the surface to recharge batteries about 15 miles south of Portland Bill when heavy weather seemingly came out of nowhere. Dark clouds filled the sky, and heavy rain pelted the decks. Out on the starboard deck, a lookout noticed a figure out on the corner of his eye close to the conning tower. Those who don't know, the conning tower is just the big jut in the center of the submarine.
That you see first as it comes out of the water.
Yeah, exactly. He thought at first this figure was a shipmate and called out to him. The figure turned to face him, and the lookout recognized the familiar face of the dead officer, Lieutenant Richter. This was the same sailor who had tragically died from the torpedo loading failure. The lookout, overcome with shock, then fell backwards down a ladder and into the control room, breaking his leg. 3 crewmen ran to help, and when they looked up the hatch, they saw the figure of Lieutenant Richter looking down at them. Captain Schell was immediately called to the bridge to investigate the apparition, but the figure had vanished as a large wave swept across the deck before the captain could even get a look. When word got around, the crew avoided going to the top side of UB-65, especially at night, but the apparition began appearing inside the U-boat, walking through a bulkhead. Meanwhile, the sub had a successful run, sinking several more vessels through the winter and into May of 1918. But the energy among the crew on board was completely off. Bizarre sightings during standard patrols continued. Once, a torpedo man went mad, screaming that the dead officer had been haunting him. He had seen the apparition of Lieutenant Richter walking through the steel hull. Crazed and disturbed by the sighting, the torpedo man climbed up the conning tower ladder and leaped overboard into the freezing ocean, never to be seen again.
Which is absolutely insane that they were this terrified by seeing somebody that you would think they wouldn't have been as scared of, knowing that it was one of their guys, right?
Right, yeah.
But the fact that this apparition is that traumatizing for them, that this guy jumps overboard, is insane.
Yeah. Not long after this, a gunner was on the deck and washed away by a rogue wave. And later, while the U-boat made its way through the Dover Straits, depth charges caused the sub to throw its crew sideways. A sailor then fatally struck his head on the bulkhead and died soon after. That February, an officer was in a small boat returning to the sub during an air raid on the nearby harbor when a bomb splinter killed him. He was carried aboard in complete silence by the crew. By now, some of the men had lost count of the death toll for UB-65. People were just dying left and right. And whatever haunting curse that kept taking out the sailors had, for whatever reason, kept the submarine itself afloat. But many men worried if it was only a matter of time. What's odd is that during the following investigations into UB-65, the written records of dates and events that were kept by the sailors didn't really match up with one another. Whether it was confusion or something else going on is unclear.
And through it all, Captain Shell was skeptical of the haunting rumors that his men kept spreading around. Regardless of whether he believed in the haunting or not, the death of his men, one after another, really disturbed him. And news of the tragedies involving UB-65 eventually made its way to land, among other superstitious sailors in port. And it's been theorized that British agents might have spread the haunting stories to cause the German sailors to feel uneasy, killing morale and causing hysteria. Either way, the stories had gotten so bad by June 1918 that the commander of the Flanders submarines made the decision to take the UB-65 out of commission for the time being. Which is nuts.
Crazy.
So, we've got to just put this thing away.
Right. And I also love the theory that it might have been British agents trying to seep these stories through.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, but either way, I mean, it's it either was haunted or these were just stories, but this
People
was
are
taken
dying.
out of commission. That's insane.
And that doesn't necessarily explain how the deaths happen. You know
right,
what I mean?
Yeah.
They're just all that terrified that all these things happen. I don't know. If you've got dogs out there, then you need to be feeding your dogs the best food on the market, and that is Sundays. Sundays for Dogs has changed the game for me when it comes to dog food. I've got 4 dogs. Austin's got a pup in here right now.
Yeah, little Jerry.
We love our dogs. And, for the longest time, especially in the early days, just kind of feeding my dogs whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever I could get my hands on, the bulk food.
Yep.
And my dogs, it just was always hit or miss. Well, that's a great thing about Sundays, is that Sundays is fresh dog food, but it doesn't need to be refrigerated. It's not messy. It is the best fresh food out there because it's air dried. It's almost like dog jerky.
Yeah.
Is kind of the consistency of it. But Sundays for Dogs is absolutely amazing. It was started by Dr. Tori Waxman, a veterinarian. So it's good quality. The ingredients are all real. There's 0% synthetic nutrients or artificial ingredients. I'm a paying customer of Sundays, by the way, and I have been for almost 2 years now. And my dogs absolutely go crazy for this food. They never leave a scrap of it in their bowl. So if you've been thinking about switching, now is the time because we have a special offer for you. You can make the switch to Sundays. Go right now to sundaysfordogs.com/lightsout and get 50% off your first order, or you can use code lightsout at checkout.
That's 50% off your first order at sundaysfordogs.com/lightsout, sundaysfordogs.com/lightsout, or use code lightsout at checkout.
You've heard us talk about Rocket Money quite a bit on the show.
Cha-ching.
We love Rocket Money. We both use it personally. I even pay for the premium subscription because I find it provides so much value and pays for itself, really. And just managing those subscriptions, it's worth it.
Yeah.
There's no easier way to get a control of your subscriptions, figure out what you're paying for, what you don't want to pay for anymore than Rocket Money. It's such a great app. It helps them find and cancel those unwanted subscriptions, also monitors your spending and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It'll go through, scan your utility bills, and if it can actually go out and negotiate a lower rate for you, it'll let you know. Then you just upload a copy of your bill, put some account info in it, and Rocket Money does the rest. It's amazing stuff.
Yeah.
But it also shows you your bill's due dates, which is really nice. So you can actually see when your utilities are coming out, your rent's coming out. It'll notify you if it goes up in cost. So if your electric bill all of a sudden spikes, it'll let you know. It'll send you an email alert, also push notification to your phone, and then you can go and take a look and see why your bill went up so much. It's just a great way to keep 2 eyes on your finances at all times. It's a beautiful dashboard. You can also cancel some of those subscriptions with a few taps. It's super easy. We love it. And if you're not using it yet, then you need to start using it, because Rocket Money has saved users over $2.5 billion, including over $880 million in canceled subscriptions alone. Their 10 million members save up to $740 a year when they use all of the app's premium features.
So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lightsout today. That's rocketmoney.com/lightsout. rocketmoney.com/lightsout.
Most of the crew was transferred and replaced at the request of the captain, while the UB-65 sat in the port. Captain Shell remained in command, was the only crew member to hold his position. Everybody else said, fuck this.
Yeah, complete wipe.
So while the U-boat was reloaded and resupplied, a naval chaplain was requested by the German Imperial Navy to perform an exorcism on the vessel, because they're like, this thing is demonically possessed. Something evil lurks aboard this vessel. The man did his best to banish the evil spirits, but it wouldn't be clear if the exorcism worked or not until the U-boat made its way back out into the water. Soon enough, the UB-65 and all of its crew would become test subjects to see whether this malevolent paranormal energy had been removed from the German U-boat. They didn't know if they would ever see land again. And on July 2nd, 1918, the UB-65 began its 6th and final patrol. On the afternoon of July 10th, something inexplicable happened. A U.S. submarine, AL-2, had been patrolling the surface that day. An officer on the deck sighted what looked like a buoy about a mile or two from their location. Commanding officer Lieutenant Foster ordered the sub to set course for the object to investigate. It later looked like a U-boat listing heavily on its side.
Which just means it's tilted.
Kind of pitched over, yeah. A few minutes later, the American sailors all felt a massive explosion shake their vessel. Where the presumed U-boat had been, a column of water shot straight into the air about 80 yards from the U.S. submarine. The sailors assumed they were in combat, and Lieutenant Foster decided to make the dangerous maneuver to dive and ram the nearby enemy U-boat, since they were now too close to fire torpedoes. Beneath the surface, sonar detected not one, but 2 enemy submarines. The closer one was moving very fast, and the distant one was apparently slow, possibly not moving at all. After 20 minutes, the fast one, which is where the explosion had occurred, had disappeared from sonar, and Lieutenant Foster assumed whatever had just exploded began to rapidly sink to the ocean floor. The sound of small propellers and an underwater signaling device could be heard for a short while after. More time passed, and the U.S. sub picked up Morse code from what they thought was a distant object in the water. --, which just spells out OE. This is not a known message in Morse. It might have been a message that was possibly cut off or intentionally cryptic. The American vessel then returned to Bantry Bay, where Lieutenant Foster reported the encounter they had just had. U.S. intel staff reported that 2 assumed U-boats had exchanged radio messages about an hour before the engagement. And around midnight, the other U-boat most likely reported that the other U-boat had sank. And what's odd is that German and French reports do not corroborate this. The radio intercept records show that the radio signal came from U-92, a damaged vessel far from this encounter. Plus, there were no recorded messages from the UB-65 since July 4th of that year, almost a week before the encounter. So what the hell
is going
on under the ocean there?
Right. And we have no, why was it listing? We have no explanation. And then it just randomly exploded when the American submarine, obviously the enemy, didn't even fire a torpedo or anything.
It's just a phantom ship.
What is going on? So the last message was from Captain Shell reporting that 2 torpedoes were fired at the UB-65 but missed. That's important. Reportedly, this was the final transmission from UB-65 before the submarine and its crew of 37 men completely vanished sometime after this transmission. No other U-boats had been deployed in that area, and there were no other losses in that position. So Lieutenant Foster's encounter on July 10th, along with the fragmented or cryptic Morse transmission, remained a complete mystery. It's believed that the distant, slower, unmoving contact might not have been a submarine at all. They're not sure. And the U.S. submarine's listening device might have mistaken where it was receiving that Morse code from. It's actually possible that the signal came from the downed UB-65 that had exploded and vanished in the ocean. It may have been about 100 meters down on the bottom of the ocean floor in uncharted depths where U-boats could really just not reach. And it's possible that the submarine somehow held together after the explosion for maybe several days before being completely destroyed by pressure. It's also possible that some of the crew had survived inside the carcass of the submarine on the ocean floor, attempting to get one final Morse code distress message out to whoever could receive it. But the pressure would most likely have killed them fairly quickly. That's terrifying to think about as well.
They know they're running out of time and they send out one last message.
Right. So the question remained, what really happened to UB-65? According to official German naval records, UB-65 was presumed lost following a premature explosion of one of its own torpedoes on July 10, 1918, south of the Irish coast. But the wreckage wasn't discovered until 2004.
That's
nuts. 100 years later. This was during a Channel 4 TV series called Wreck Detectives. It was identified through several design features and ID numbers stamped onto the propeller. It could not be determined that the destruction of the UB-65 was caused by a weapon attack, although shock damage from depth charges might have destroyed some of the U-boat, causing it to sink. Maybe that's why it was listing on its side at first. The aft hatches were also found open, meaning that some of the crew might have tried to escape at some point after the explosion. The investigation concluded that the UB-65 was most likely destroyed by accidental causes on or after July 14, 1918, since this was the alleged date of UB-65's last confirmed raid. The wreck was later given protected place status in November 2006. So even the dates are a bit scattered here. It's believed that one of the UB-65's own torpedoes exploded in its firing tube, possibly after a failure of the magnetic pistol, eventually causing this vessel to sink, and the remaining ship was then destroyed by the ocean's pressure when it sank to the bottom. But still, the end of this UB-65, its tragic end beneath the surface, will forever remain a mystery. At the time of its disappearance, many German soldiers were convinced that the haunting presence of Lieutenant Richter wreaked so much havoc, causing the submarine to list before setting off the torpedo in the ship's tube, the same thing, if you remember, that had caused his death. According to one source, an American officer aboard the U.S. sub thought he saw a figure on the deck of the UB-65 just before it exploded and disappeared beneath the surface. The figure appeared to be a person in a German officer's overcoat, standing near the bow with his arms crossed, and many believe this was the final appearance of the ghost of Lieutenant Richter.
Damn, that's crazy, though. That
is crazy.
It seems like the general consensus believes that this was Richter's doing.
Right,
that he had some type of paranormal effect on this boat. Like, it's just cursed.
I mean, how else? They're listing for no known reason, and then a torpedo just explodes inside of its chamber for no reason?
Yeah, it makes there's really no logical explanation for any of it.
Yeah, unless if it's like serious engineering failures, which could be possible, but yeah, we still don't really have a proper explanation for it.
And just, God, the amount of deaths from just sort of random things that happen.
Yeah, and it's bizarre that they had clean raids. Like they took down several vessels, and none of the deaths actually occurred during those encounters with enemy ships.
Right.
It was only just accidental crazy shit going on outside of the combat.
Yeah, that's wild. Well, let's move over to Okinawa, Japan. Kadena Air Base. So this is the largest U.S. military installation in the Pacific at the time, and it was often referred to as the Keystone of the Pacific. It was established to finally bring an end to the Pacific Campaign in World War II. And while it's considered one of the most strategic U.S. military bases, it's also one of the most haunted military bases in the entire world, sitting on one of Japan's most haunted islands. On April 1st, 1945, the U.S. 10th Army attacked Okinawa, lasting 82 days. And this battle was bloody, man. Over 200,000 casualties in total, and many more civilian casualties, which made it the bloodiest battle in the Pacific. Many believe that the paranormal entities of Kadena are residuals of this battle and the bloodshed on the island of Okinawa. After the war ended, the U.S. retained Kadena, and the base continues to operate to this day.
Two things that are really interesting about Okinawa. One, it's way far from Japan if you look on a map. I mean, it's close to like Taiwan, China, right? It's way out there. And actually, it wasn't even really Japanese. It was more of an occupied island. So there were like, as far as I understand, there were like indigenous people who lived there. And then Japan basically colonized that island. So even the civilians who were living there and then being murdered are like, we wanted no part of any of this.
Yeah, we didn't ask for this at all.
So absolute tragedy here.
In the decades that followed the war, while some visitors have encountered friendly entities, many of which are believed to be the spirits of all the deceased World War II soldiers, others have had less fortunate experiences at Kadena Air Base, and countless complaints have been submitted to the military police over the years. On Kadena Air Base, there is the Banyan Tree Golf Course, which was once the site of a Japanese field hospital during the war. It's a beautiful spot. I mean, Okinawa is beautiful scenery, island. Down near the coast is a cave with a reputation that scared off military members and even the locals, because lots of distant sounds of crying and guttural screaming have been heard echoing from the cave and out in the water, especially in the dead of night. Swimmers have also felt unseen forces pulling them down into the ocean's depths. Some have even lost their lives. Legend has it that a group of nurses who worked at a field hospital during the war had become terrified of the invading U.S. troops that were occupying the island. The nurses hid inside the caves, and rather than waiting for the U.S. forces to come find them, they committed suicide inside of the caves, and it's believed that their spirits now terrorize and continue to infest the cave and the nearby waters. Just north of this cave, at Maida Point, was the location of another Japanese field hospital during the war. Shadowy figures have been seen throwing themselves from the cliff tops down toward the waves below, but the apparitions never seem to make it to the water, as the phantoms disappeared just before impact. The figure of an elderly man has been seen wandering near the shore, and it's said that those who have spotted the decrepit old man before they head into the water never return to the shore alive. So if you see the man, it's best to pack up and get the hell out of there. Another haunting account comes from an employee who once worked at the base's residential daycare center. The anonymous employee, whom we'll call Jane, had worked at the base for years, and she noticed the same bizarre instance that always occurred, no matter which group of kids were at the daycare over the years. The daycare always had a problem with the children going into the play area behind the daycare and throwing their toys over the high fence. The first time Jane saw this, she took one of the toys from the child's hand, who had his arm cocked back like he was going to throw it. She scolded him for throwing the toys over the fence. And the boy's father was a senior NCO with the 19th Tactical Electronic Warfare Squadron who had just been deployed to the base. So Angela had only been at the daycare for a few weeks at most. When the boy looked up at her, she noticed that he had a dazed look in his eyes, like he was looking straight through her. Jane asked him if he would be upset that he couldn't take his toy cars back home, since he was throwing them over the fence. And in a calm, quiet voice, the boy told her that he only wanted to share the toys with the little girl who was playing on the other side of the fence. But Jane knew there was no children on the other side of the fence. There was only large fields that led to several runways. Jane asked the other workers if they had ever seen any children on the other side of that fence, just to be safe. But no one had. And no matter which group or what year it was, the children would always throw the toys over the fence giving the exact same excuse every time, that they're just trying to be nice to the children on the other side. One year, a taller fence was installed, but the children still found a way to get the toys over it. Jane eventually got used to picking up the toys each day. Sometimes she'd find them in peculiar positions, like they had been played with, which is very obvious. Sometimes when she was retrieving the toys, she heard the sound of children giggling and whispering, even though all the children had gone inside after the whistle. Which is pretty chilling.
Yeah, pretty
It's
spooky.
Definitely something up there. This episode of Lights Out is also brought to you by another one of our favorites, Wild Grain. Wild Grain is the first bake from frozen subscription box for artisanal bread, seasonal pastries, and fresh pastas.
Oh my God.
And it's that time of year to carbo load every meal. Wild Grain uses simple ingredients you can pronounce, and a slow fermentation process can be easier on your belly and richer in nutrients and antioxidants. So if you're gonna carbo load,
yes,
good quality carb.
do it with nutrition. Yeah.
With nutrition, yes. I love everything Wild Grain makes. Wild Grain's croissants are top notch.
They are.
And don't get me started on their chocolate chunk cookies.
Oh my God.
And for the holidays, they have these delicious seasonal favorites they bring out every year, include Tear and Share cranberry pecan rolls.
Oh my God.
What? Parmesan herb biscuits and apple pie bites. Man, just amazing. So good. And we're not just saying that. This is actually legit one of our favorite sponsors.
No, yeah, seriously.
So for a limited time, Wild Grain is offering our listeners $30 off your first box, plus free croissants in every box when you go to wildgrain.com/lightsout to start your subscription.
That's right. You heard them. Free croissants in every box. Croissants and $30 off your first box when you go to wildgrain.com/lightsout. That's wildgrain.com/lightsout. Or you can use promo code lightsout at checkout.
Do it. This podcast is sponsored by Smalls, and listeners know that my cats simply have to have the best, and they're always hungry these days, and they cannot live without Smalls. For so many years, I fed them the goop out of the cans. They loved it for some reason, but it is not good for their health. It looks like snot. So give your cats good quality food that's high in protein. It's fresh, comes to the door, you throw it in the fridge, or you throw it in the freezer if you're not ready. You thaw it out, you put it in your cat's bowl, and then they just go to town. My cats are up there in age as well, so I want to make sure I'm getting them the best quality food I can give them. The protein-rich meals really do make my cats feel better. They look healthier. Their coats are softer. And just overall, I'm really impressed with Smalls. It's definitely the best cat food that I've given them. And it's super easy. They have a little quiz online so you can give them some information about your cats, their diet, their health, and food preferences. And then Smalls puts together a personalized sampler for you so that you can actually try out which ones work best for your cats. After switching to Smalls, 88% of cat owners reported overall health improvements, which is a big deal. And the team at Smalls is so confident your cat will love their product that you can try it risk-free, which means if you go through this offer and you give your cats the food and they just turn their noses up to it, they will refund you. They're so confident that your cats will love their food that they give you this risk-free guarantee. So what are you waiting for? Get the food that your cats deserve. For a limited time, because you're a Lights Out listener, you get 60% off your first order plus free shipping when you head to smalls.com/lightsout.
One last time, that's 60% off your first order plus free shipping when you head to smalls.com/lightsout. And another area on the base that has become pretty infamous for its hauntings is actually directly beside this daycare. This is called Building 2283, which was once a single-unit family home in the residential area for mid-grade officers. And this was once considered the center of paranormal activity on the entire base and possibly the most haunted house in the entire U.S. military. Regardless of who was housed here, they would never stay for long because no one could stomach it, and a number of families who lived there reported the disembodied voice of a woman singing softly around the house. The faucet in the bathroom would also constantly be found running with no one else around. But one of the most disturbing stories at Building 2283 dates back to the 1970s, when an Air Force officer and his family were posted there. Almost immediately after this family moved in, the officer's mental health deteriorated and his paranoia escalated. It had gotten so bad that the man eventually murdered his entire family before committing suicide inside the home. After this, any family who attempted to live in the house had increased feelings of anxiety and paranoia, so the building was turned into a storage shed. Even then, the haunting continued, and people passing the house at night would often hear children crying or menacing laughter coming from inside. One worker who entered the building to store away some items heard the bathroom sink running. He then found the figure of a woman washing her hair before she vanished into thin air. Kadena officials had apparently ordered the demolition of the building long before, but construction workers who arrived at the demo job all complained of headaches, hallucinations, and minor accidental injuries. Then the sounds of wandering children were often heard around this house. Sometimes the voices were playful, while other times they were piercing shrieks or whimpering noises. And as the mounting complaints of children throwing toys over the daycare fence next door came in, it was soon linked to Building 2283. Some assumed the children on the other side of this fence may have been the children who were murdered by their father years earlier. Others point to the 1959 Okinawa F-100 crash as a possible cause for the phantom children over here. On June 30th, 1959, 34-year-old Captain John G. Schmidt Jr., while piloting an F-100D Super Sabre, lost control of his plane during a test flight. Captain Schmidt ejected to safety, but the Super Sabre crashed into Miyamori Elementary School and several houses below in a tragic disaster about 10 miles from Kadena Air Base. The children at the elementary school had been taking a milk break at the end of the second hour of classes when the plane crashed into the school. The crash injured 210 residents and 156 students. 11 children and 6 adults died, and another student died from complications from their burn wounds several years later. 27 buildings were destroyed. It was determined that an engine fire had caused the plane to crash, and Captain Schmidt reportedly tried to aim the plane at an empty, hilly area nearby before ejecting. The catastrophic disaster resulted in enraged protests calling for the U.S. occupational authorities to leave Okinawa entirely, which never happened. The U.S. military attempted to compensate the victims, paying $4,500 for the dead and $2,300 to $5,900 for serious injuries, depending on the severity of the disability.
It sounds like the U.S. military. Yeah, we'll just pay you off.
Yeah, whatever.
Here's a little bit of money.
Yeah, it's some hush money.
No, you're traumatized forever.
Right. The U.S. military paid a total of about $120,000 in compensation for the accident, which was only 10% of what had been requested by the victims. A memorial statue was later erected at the crash site in 1965. Some believe that the victims' spirits later occupied Building 2283 in Kadena Air Base out of revenge, since that's where the plane had first taken flight.
I kind of believe this.
Yeah,
honestly, what a tragedy,
right?
Did he really try to aim it away? Or, I don't know, man.
I guess I know, like,
it's
engine
horrible.
failure and whatnot, but
to take out an elementary school?
God.
Others passing by the house complained of hearing a phone ringing inside, even though there was no landline. Faucets would turn on and curtains would open by themselves. When the curtains were closed, there were reports of a strange glowing light coming from within the house. When military police entered the home, they of course couldn't find the source of this light. When another complaint came in which reported clanking and clattering noises from within the home, authorities went to investigate. While an officer entered Building 2283 alone, he felt the presence of someone standing beside him. He knew he was not alone. When he turned to look, he witnessed the figure of a samurai warrior in full regalia. He gripped the handle of a sheathed katana strapped to his waist. The officer quickly stumbled out of the home and ran off. And the man was ridiculed for reporting what he had seen.
Yeah, you ghost samurai.
Whew. Yeah, not messing around with that at all.
You ever seen Shogun? I haven't seen
Yeah,
the show
it's been
yet.
a minute, yeah.
I actually read the book earlier this year. It was awesome, but samurais are sick, man.
Yeah, then there's that, what's that recent video game, Ghosts of
Tsushima or whatever.
Yeah, that game's sick too.
I think the sequel just came out too pretty recently. Yote or something like that.
Yeah, the samurai sword, man. But not long after, 2 more officers witnessed the phantom of a samurai riding a horse near building 2283. You almost wonder if it's sort of a guardian spirit or something.
Yeah.
The building was eventually demolished in 2009 at the request of the next door daycare facility. The rumors of the ghost children over the fence near building 2283 had gotten so bad that the parents no longer allowed their children to attend this daycare. After the building was demolished, the paranormal encounters near what was once building 2283 seemed to die down significantly. About a half hour north of Kadena is Camp Hansen, a naval base home to about 6,000 Marines and built in 1965. It sits on another airfield that was captured by the U.S. during the Battle of Okinawa. Not long after the base was established, stories spread about the haunting of Gate 3 guardhouse. In the late 60s, a soldier was on duty at Gate 3 in the dark early morning hours. A severe thunderstorm rolled into the area, so the soldier found some shelter near the entrance of the guardhouse. Through the downpour, he noticed a dark figure in the distance, another Marine in a rain poncho that was heading toward him, and made his way up to the gate. And when the man in the poncho got close enough, the soldier finally got a look at his face, which was covered in deep gashes. Through wounds, the man's piercing eyes stared into the soldier's. And when the soldier finally broke his gaze, he noticed that beneath the Marine's poncho, the man's uniform was soaked in fresh blood. The strange man then reached out his hand, which was also dripping in blood. And after a flash of thunder lit up the gate and the crack of thunder rang out, the bloodied soldier just vanished. This apparition has been seen many times at the Gate 3 guardhouse over the decades. One soldier who was watching the gate even felt a tap on his shoulder, only to turn around to see the bloodied apparition requesting a match to light his cigarette. And this isn't the only haunted gate in Okinawa. Back over at Kadena at the Chibana Gate, soldiers have seen shadowy apparitions moving around. And we actually have some footage we want to show you of a shadow moving at the gate. So it's actually been captured.
Yeah, this one's kind of nuts.
So for those listening, it looks like it's like a security camera.
You're kind of grainy.
So like close at the bottom left corner of the screen. Behind the sun.
It's gonna move now. It's gonna move. Watch it. You see?
Yeah, I see the shadow moving.
You see how it moves?
Yeah, it's right behind the sign. Yeah.
And it's gonna fire away in a little bit.
Right there, it's going.
Whoa.
Hold on.
You want to see it again? Or rewind?
Hold on. Rewind it and pause it.
I'll see.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that looks like it almost walks there at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then it kind of jumps over to the fence there. But it's clear there's some type of shadowy figure.
Yeah, I don't know what that would be.
I don't know how you explain that otherwise. Yeah, it's nuts. You can see it kind of takes a couple, what looks like steps.
Ooh.
Yeah. And it just completely...
What is it?
But there's a dark mass there.
Yeah.
No doubt. And then it just goes...
Whoop.
Floats on over. Well, it looks like it runs almost.
Yeah.
Runs across the screen.
No idea.
Yeah. I think all this is true. This is definitely haunted.
Something's going on at Kadena.
I don't know how you explain it otherwise than this is absolutely paranormal activity.
Yeah. This is also just a huge base, too.
It makes sense based on all the tragic things that have happened here that there would be some paranormal activity left over. My God.
Yeah, World War II, man. Brutal stuff.
Absolutely insane. There's so many stories.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go to any war in history and there's stories.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of just unexplainable things that have happened. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and the that earlier story, what was it? It was the Maida Point, where they were seeing like apparitions kind of jumping off the cliffs. So I had my grandma's next door neighbor, Walter Brown, rest in peace. He actually served in World War II. He was a tank commander on Iwo Jima. Crazy stories. He was such a sweet man, though. You would never expect like the horrors that he had seen. But he explained when they got onto Iwo Jima, These islands, they didn't, kind of from what I understand is that a lot of the locals who lived there were fed so much propaganda against the U.S. that they thought the U.S. would just come in and eviscerate everyone in sight. So what they would do is they would go to the edge of the cliffs and just take their children and everything and just jump off, because they were like, we'd rather just end our lives here than whatever the U.S. soldiers are going to subject us to. So I think that's kind of what those apparitions are alluding to, is they're just so terrified of the U.S. soldiers that they were just jumping off the cliffs, or like the nurses hiding in the caves and just where they would rather just take their own lives
rather than be caught
by these, like, how they were fed, like the evil US soldiers,
right?
Because the propaganda there.
What a wild time. It's hard to even wrap your head around this sometimes.
Right.
Can't even imagine what that must have been like.
Right.
Holidays are right around the corner. Can't believe we're already headed into December here pretty soon. And, you got to start thinking about what you're going to be gifting your friends and family. Uncommon Goods is a great place to look for gifts because the variety is endless. And I promise you will find gifts for everybody on your list, whether it's kids, grandpa, grandma, auntie, your mistress, whoever it is. They got you covered. They've got personalized gifts as well, so you can get things engraved. You get a cutting board with your mistress's name carved into it.
Dang,
personalized.
That's awesome.
For when she's over cooking you a meal after your affair.
That's
not saying I know this from personal experience by any means, but there's so many great gifts and unique things. Like if you have a golf lover in your family, they have all sorts of like cool little golf gadgets and little decorations, like tees with like little golf balls on it that's like turns into like a cuckoo clock, and like all this really cool, unique items. They're high quality and they're often handmade and made in the USA, which we love. Many are crafted by independent artists and small businesses, so every gift feels special and thoughtfully chosen. It kind of reminds me of when you go shopping in like a little downtown area of a little mountain town or a little, town old town, wherever you live. They always have those little ma pa.
Yeah, trinket shops and stuff. And just like cool items that they have in there.
That's what Uncommon Goods is.
Yeah.
It's this massive library of high quality, unique gifts for everybody. And you're supporting artists and small independent businesses, which is awesome. And with every purchase you make at Uncommon Goods, they give back $1 to a nonprofit partner of your choice. They've donated more than $3.1 million today, so you're supporting a great cause. They're a great company. Definitely want to check it out. And we have a special offer for you, of course.
So do not wait. Make this holiday the year you give something truly unforgettable. To get that 50% off your next gift, go to uncommongoods.com/lightsout. That's uncommongoods.com/lightsout for 15% off. Don't miss out on this limited time offer. Uncommon Goods. We're all out of the
ordinary. Danny, what do you think? I know you're probably a bit skeptical of these stories, but I'm curious when it comes to like war stories, where you land.
I mean, I'm always skeptical about these stories.
What about what you just saw?
What I just saw, I mean, it's
a bug.
It could be a bird. It could be a bat. It could be anything. I mean, the video itself.
Bat that walks on two legs.
I didn't see legs.
You didn't see like little leg movements?
I saw a blur.
Can we watch it again? Actually, I can't. I don't know
what
this is.
Watch carefully.
Because I'm pretty skeptical too of these videos, but I cannot explain what this is.
Yeah. It makes some movements that, like, look.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's hard to catch, but it looks like there's two little appendages coming out of this thing, and they move kind of independently of the larger masses. Yeah, look at that. It has like a walking sort of movement to it. But yeah, I mean, it's grainy. It's
low quality for sure, but it's still, I don't even know. Is it just a
moth?
How you can? I'm not sure how you could.
I mean,
I have no explanation for that.
I know. To me, it looks like there's a bird or something sitting on the sign, and then it flies away.
That looks like a bird to you?
No, but it doesn't look like a person.
Yeah, it doesn't look like a person. But What does it look like?
But that movement pattern is what makes me believe it, because it sits on the sign on top of it, and then it goes away.
I can kind of see what
wouldn't
Josh...
the camera be able to make out a little bit better? It
Oh,
makes
for
out
sure.
that
It's not
sign
that
there.
low quality. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, you
yeah.
would be able to... It's a security camera, so you should be able to tell if it's like a person
Yeah.
or not, or like a figure. But I kind of see what you're saying. Your brain could kind of fill in the gaps of like, it looks like somebody kind of running.
And I can see that too. I don't think it's... I definitely can agree that it's weird and it's strange,
Yeah.
but my mind doesn't go to ghost. My mind goes to...
My mind just goes to, I don't know what that is.
Exactly.
And I have no explanation for it.
How do you explain the toys being like played with and in weird positions on the other side of the fence, and the kids constantly wanting to throw the toys over it?
Yeah.
Is it just the kids are just bored and they want to throw their toys over the fence?
Maybe.
Well, that's kind of what I was thinking, is that, I mean, these kids are all on the other side of the world. They're all, they're military kids. So they probably don't have a lot of, friends and stuff like that. So when they're on this military base, they get kind of close knit. And kids make up stories all the time. Kids make up legends all the times. And it could just been a kind of they probably like heard a local legend on Okinawa, and they all kind of agreed like, oh, we should give our toys over. It's not, I don't think that the toys, like the kids tossing the toys over the fence, is anything paranormal. Even if they land on the other side and it look like they have been played with, what does that mean? Because the kids hucked them over a fence. Like they could land in a bunch of different ways. That, of all the things that happen on the island, is the least weird to me. I think the screaming in the caves is a lot more interesting. I think pretty much everything besides the toys. The toys thing is the least convincing thing, in my opinion. I think that when we hear about like war ghost stories, it's hard for me to believe that they're actual ghost stories, because these men and women are under a severe amount of stress most of the time, especially on the U-boat. Being on a submarine sounds like an absolute hell, and I can imagine how these men, meters under the water in this confined space, see things. So the U-boat, to me, again, I'm just going back to the old ones. The U-boat, to me, I think it's more a psychological stress thing. I don't think it's actual hauntings. I would believe that Okinawa and Kadena Air Base is more haunted than the U-boat, in my opinion.
Than like a cursed U-boat?
Yeah, because like a U-boat, submarines go through a lot of technical failures. There's a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of things that can go wrong, and it sounds like this ship was kind of built broken in a sense.
Right. It was kind of like the early days of it too, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So they're probably still working out some of the kinks there, and I'm sure there's all sorts of mishaps that happen with lots of different German technology over time.
Yeah, and submarines are just notoriously, it's an inherently dangerous thing to be on. And I imagine all the sailors know that, and there's a lot of psychological stress going on with them. I don't know, I kind of went off on a tangent here.
Well, to your point too, I think also if you remember, there was like exhaust gas and carbon monoxide issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that makes you wonder, are they actually
Hallucinating.
experiencing something paranormal, or are they having hallucinations?
Yeah, like
because of the leaks.
Yeah. On top of the confinement, I mean, the stress of it all, you think you're on a haunted ship, which is going to affect your psychological stress even more.
Well, and just knowing, like, I mean, I think any of us getting onto some type of vessel that we know just a bunch of people just died on, that's already like a preconceived notion we're going to have.
Exactly.
And if somebody's also, those damn Brits going around telling stories, right? And if that is what happened and they're planting seeds, you know what I mean? That would probably scare any of us.
You're going to believe it. And I'm not trying to say that, like, I wasn't there. I hope to never be on a submarine. But I haven't seen these things. But just from my knowledge and understanding of the world, I just feel like it was probably all psychological, not physical.
Yeah, it's interesting because I just came across Submariners Advocacy Group. Submarine toxic, hazardous, and radiation exposures. There's like a whole, interesting. Generations of submarine veterans are suffering from serious health issues as a result of working on submarines.
That makes sense.
Possibly unknown number of submariners diagnosed annually with illnesses potentially linked to toxins found in submarine atmospheres.
I believe it.
I believe it too.
Lack of consistent and accurate scientific data on submarine atmospheric toxicity available to prove or disprove illnesses.
I've also just had family work on boats for months at a time, out at sea. You can kind of just start going nuts. Like they have stories of guys just going nuts. You catch them like naked and at 3 a.m. on the boat, covered in a shock blanket, and they're just kind of going crazy. It happens,
You're confined.
Yeah.
So it probably in the early days, they really struggled with maintaining the proper atmosphere required. So yeah, it looks like there's some there's some carcinogens, asbestos.
God, we were probably exposing those soldiers to a million different chemicals and whatnot.
It's a very hazardous work environment for sure.
There was some theory that it was like the stories that were published were kind of exaggerated or made up. And like, I like the theory that maybe they were planted by it was like a psyop by British spies were kind of planting the seeds of all this crazy stuff happening. Regardless, though, of the UB-65 haunting, it is still crazy that they just found it listing for no reason, and then the torpedo inside the chamber explodes and then sinks, and then there's some weird Morse code message trying to go out. What is that about, man? Is that just like, are these just massive technical failures across the board? Possibly. I mean, it could just be poor engineering, but I don't know. There's still no official explanation the official explanation is that it was most likely an accident.
Right.
That's all we really know at the end of the day.
But who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, I'm curious what you out there think of these. Like, do you believe in these paranormal military stories? Or do you kind of err on the side that Danny is on? That these are there's logical explanations there. Like maybe it's not documented, but maybe there's more rational logical explanations for some of these things. I mean, we already pointed out some of them that could absolutely be a pretty it's hard to refute,
Yeah.
They're working in hazardous conditions, there's carcinogens and carbon monoxide going there. I mean, your mental capacity is not going to be great. You might be seeing crazy shit.
Yeah, it also could be just mass hysteria. If I feel like in a crew of 30 some guys, if like a few of them start to say that, dude, we saw Lieutenant Richter the other day. I don't know, you're out at sea and that's all you really have access to are these guys telling stories. It might get pretty freaky just throughout the whole crew pretty fast.
And I know submarines make all sorts of crazy sounds and
do
all sorts of weird things. So if you're not used to that environment, you might get sketched out real quick. Yeah. Wild though. Let us know if you want to see more military paranormal encounters, because we could keep going on and on. There's lots of interesting stories out there. Or maybe you have a suggestion for us for a future episode. You should drop it. Drop it in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're listening elsewhere. Go to YouTube and drop us a comment. We appreciate it. But that's going to be where we wrap up things today. We'll be back next week, of course, with another one, and a crazy one. Just kind of a very different story than what we've covered here.
There's kind of nothing like this next one coming up.
Yeah, I'm intrigued, and we'll see where that one goes. But that's it for us today. See you next time. Lights out, everybody.